Hi folks, it's a rainy day here in Ontario, and I am back. Apologies, I was gone for a bit. I don't think anybody noticed, but that's okay. Um, yeah, so today's agenda for me is to address one of the comments that I received on a video because I really want to focus on making this a space where people's questions are answered. So if you have questions and you put them in the comments, please know that I will read them and I will follow up either with another reply or with a video. So here is my first video response to one of the comments. So in this comment, we had someone request some guidance around a certain situation. So the situation is as noted here. You want to talk to somebody like your primary care physician, but you're afraid that they would overreact and end up making you go to a psych hospital, which would make things so much worse than they already are. They were asking for a friend. Okay, so first and foremost, sometimes the help that we ask for and we say for a friend is really help for ourselves, because of the stigma and the taboo nature and the feelings of shame that follow these thoughts of suicide. So if that is you, please know there's no shame, there is no stigma, and getting help is something that a lot of people are doing, and it's becoming normal and it's becoming okay. So I encourage you, if you are in such a position, that you get the help that you need. All right, so let's respond to this scenario that I have here. I'd like to address this as if you are the person with thoughts of suicide. Now, why I'm going to take this approach is because in order to be an effective helper to someone who may be experiencing this kind of hesitation, you really truly need to understand what it's like for them so that you have put on their shoes as much as possible. And thus, if you can really imagine what this is like for someone, you will be a more effective helper, because you'll understand what it feels like at least a little bit of a basic feeling, at least in terms of some feeling. You will be able to understand some. As a helper, if you can put yourself in their shoes as much as possible, it will make you a more effective helper because you're at least attempting to understand their perspective, their feelings, their fears. And so if you are in this position, there's a lot of fears that are rooted to a lot of the unknowns, right? If I share this with a doctor, I don't know how they're going to react. I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know if I want the next steps. There's a lot of unknowns. And so this can create a lot of fear in reaching out, in approaching help. And so as a person with thoughts of suicide, you may be hesitant to put this out there because of all of this. So the first place where all of this starts from is your thoughts, right? We can spiral out of control because of our thoughts in a lot of situations. And so in this situation, you're having thoughts maybe related to things like, they're going to judge me, they're going to think I'm so pathetic and weak, and I don't know what they're going to do, who are they going to tell, I don't want to put myself out there, it's just going to make everything worse. And so you're starting to spiral. The first thing you want to do is you want to consider, okay, what are my exact thoughts? Are they valid? Is there evidence that these thoughts are real? Ideally, once you investigate your thoughts, once you actually look for evidence for what you're believing and what you're telling yourself, ideally, you'll realize perhaps it's all being blown up in your head, right? That would be great, because then you would be like, okay, it's not as scary, I can go get help. And sometimes when you investigate your thoughts, maybe you have real reasons why reaching out is going to be difficult for you. Maybe you do have a bit of a cold, detached physician who would maybe panic a little if you brought up something like that. So either way, you've got these thoughts. So you want to assess what is going on, what is the reality of my situation. So if you find that you have a lot of fears and you may not know the validity of these fears, you want to start by getting information. So as a helper in this situation, now that you've understood what's going through this person with thoughts of suicide's head in a very basic way, and everybody's different, now what you want to do is think, okay, there's a lot of fears about unknowns. What can I do? I can provide information. So your job as a helper would then be finding out what is something that can be expected, right? You can talk to your own physician. I've got a friend, they're struggling with this. What would a physician response be, right? Get some information. What would it look like to have something happen that perhaps you didn't want to happen? So for example, let's play out the script a little. What we mean by playing out the script is, in your imagination, let things play out. Let's do best case and worst case scenario. All right, worst case scenario, you tell your doctor and they panic. They're like, oh my goodness, I am going to get you to a psych ward ASAP because you are at risk of harming yourself or another person. In Ontario, in Canada, you can be formed. It's a Form 1 situation, which basically means that if they are concerned about you harming yourself or others, they can get you to a psychiatrist department, whether that's at a hospital or an outpatient clinic. They can have you assessed or monitored for about 72 hours to make sure you're okay, you're stable. Ideally, this is a supportive response to your emergency situation. So if a person is having a lot of fears about those next steps, you may want to find out more information about what that would look like, who would be involved, what would we have to do. So as a helper, if you can start calling up your local resources, you can even call the local helpline and find out what this process would be like. Then you can sit there with the person who's having thoughts of suicide and walk them through some of their greatest fears around this process, right? What is the worst case scenario? Would it be as scary as you think it would be? If somebody does find out, how would that affect you? Is there ways that we can plan around that? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get them help for thoughts of suicide. Suicide is about life or death, all right? And so all of these little fears that you have, that somebody may judge you, that somebody may, notice or have some of your information, or maybe that somebody would overreact, at the end of the day, these are all minute details, because what you're talking about is life and death. And so it's really important to make sure that the priorities are put in place, okay? You need to get the help that is available to you. And if that's not your comfort zone, any help is better than no help. So maybe looking at a few different options. So maybe just calling a helpline together might be a good first step to take, or take it by yourself if you are the one seeking help. Ask the person on the helpline, what would it look like if I got help for this? What are my options? And I put that out there because depending on where you're situated, the options may look very different for different regions, different parts of the world. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. The reality is that most situations will fall between that sort of worst case scenario and best case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, you get sent to a psych ward when you don't want to go there. You're assessed for 72 hours and you leave and you're like, that was pointless, all right? But you're still here. You're still pushing through. And your loved ones would argue that perhaps getting some help and experiencing a worst case scenario may actually make it easier to then try again, maybe with a different approach, because now you've got the worst case scenario behind you. Then there's also the best case scenario, right? We are growing a lot as a society, as a community. People are talking about mental health more, so perhaps you share this with a doctor or physician and they respond with concern and they let you stay in the lead. They ask you what kind of supports you have. How long have you been feeling this way? Would you like some help and guidance with perhaps some options that might be available to you? And you feel cared about and you feel no judgment and you're able to get the help that you need. Best case scenario. And maybe when you talk through with it with your doctor, you may find out that it's not so scary after all. Most situations will fall somewhere in between that best case and worst case scenario. And so figuring out what works for you or what works best for the person who's seeking help is going to look different to a lot of different people. What you want to do, what you want to make sure is that stay away from judgment. All right, judgment just furthers shame, and it becomes harder to look for help if you're feeling judged and shamed. And number two, any kind of connection or reaching out is better than no reaching out. So even if it's that one step of calling that helpline, of sharing with that loved one, it's something. For the person who's having thoughts of suicide, I want to put out there, no emotions last forever. All right, things will change. Sometimes it feels like it won't, but they will. No season in life is forever. You also might want to look at different options. So have a look at that. If it's not your doctor, this might mean a crisis line or a mental health support group, or maybe just your friend or a loved one who can talk you through some of the struggles you're going through. If you are at a very heavy place in your life and you are seriously considering it, I urge you to get yourself to an emergency hospital. I know they triage, and if you're not bleeding out on the floor, they probably will make you wait hours, but just do it. And then while you're waiting, what you do is you call up a helpline, you call up a friend, and you use that time to talk. If you can have someone there with you and physically be present with you, that's obviously ideal. But push on, try hard, because life can get better and it will feel different. And your future self will thank you for pushing through some of those hardest bits in life.